च कर्ता च त्रिधैव गुणभिदतः रोचते गुणसंख्याने यथा वृक्षणुतान्यपि.
According to the three modes of material nature, there are three kinds of knowledge: action and performer of action. Now hear of them from me.
Next 20. सर्वभूतेषु येनैकं भावम् अव्ययम् इक्षते अविभक्तं विभक्तेषु तज्ज्ञानं विधि सात्विकम्.
That knowledge by which one undivided spiritual nature is seen in all living entities, though they are divided into innumerable forms, you should understand to be the mode of goodness.
Text 21. पृथक्त्वेन तु यज्ञानं नाना भावान् पृथक् विधान् वेत्ति सर्वेषु भूतेषु तज्ज्ञानं विधि राजसम्.
That knowledge by which one sees that in every different body there is a different type of living entity, you should understand to be in the mode of passion.
Text 22. यत्तु कृत्स्नवाद एकस्मिन् कार्ये सत्तम् अहेतुकम् अतर्थवद् अल्पं च तत्तमसम् उदारतम्.
And that knowledge by which one is attached to one kind of work as the all in all, without knowledge of the truth, and which is very meager, is said to be in the mode of darkness.
Text 23. नियतं संगारहितं अरागादेव सतः कृतं अफला प्रपेषु न कर्म यत्तत् सात्विकम् उच्यते.
That action which is regulated and which is performed without attachment, without love or hatred, and without desire for future results, is said to be in the mode of goodness.
24. यत्तु कामे पूषण कर्म सहंकारेण वा पुनः क्रियते बहुल्यासं तद् राजसम् उदारतम्.
But action performed with great effort by one seeking to gratify his desires and enacted from a sense of false ego is called action in the mode of passion.
Next 25. Anubandham kshayam hinsam anapekshya cha paurusham mohad arabhyate karma yattat tamasam uchyate.
That action performed in illusion, in disregard of Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Prabhuji, can you mute everybody and then maybe Joli Mata can mute her?
Yeah, just a sec.
Hare Krishna, that's fine. That action performed in illusion, in disregard of scriptural injunctions, and without concern for future bondage or for violence or distress caused to others instead, is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Thank you very much, Julie Mataji, as well as Sandeep Prabhu. It was a beautiful recitation. Now, can you tell me that you are able to see a blue screen, or you are still seeing the Bhagavad Gita?
Still the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay. So I need to change to a setting where I can share my another screen. Let me see if I can do that. Okay. Can you see the Bhagavad Gita now online?
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Yes,
thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhu.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So we had some difficulties today, and we can only apologize to each other. Technology, what can you do with technology? And of course, our Dibinam Prabhu His magical presence is working for us. He's choosing to decide to go out, then I'm not able to do anything. So we are dependent upon him. As devotees of the Lord, you're dependent upon devotees and the Lordship. So apologies for all of that. We have lost almost 10 minutes in trying to coordinate all that. So whatever time is left, we will try to do some justice. And Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhave vicha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. My obeisances to all the Vaishnavas assembled here. This beautiful verse is a very heart of Gita, and we'll talk about it. Why is it so? I'll just read the verse again. But before we go there, I'll just chant the Pranati prayers, and everybody who knows can chant by being mute yourself. Om Agyanam Timrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupa Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Advaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shibanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhayevcha Patitanam Papnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Requesting everybody else to mute, otherwise I'll have to go and see the mute here. Okay, I take everybody as muted. So this verse, Yattu kame pusana karma, Yattu kam e pupsna karma, Sanghakarena va punaha, Kriyate bahul ayasam, tad rajasam udharitam. So very important words are here. Some of these words, bahula ayasam. Bahula means great labor. So this great labor is being done with kam upsuna, basically with the desire of fruitive results. That is why is bahul asayan for kam ipsuna. Now it also says with fruitive desires. Kam upsuna means desire for fruitive results, and ahankarena, under the spell of false ego. Kriyate is performed. When the work is performed with great labor under the false ego, we become ipsuna with a desire to have or to enjoy the fruitive results. Then that work is called or is example of mode of passion. Now, in this world, we know that how mode of passion is really working out everybody. And in fact, there's somebody unmuted still, so I'm trying to unmute them. Please bear with me. Yeah, finally I found. Okay. So when we have this day-to-day language, then say, oh, I'm very passionate about it. And in the curriculum vitae or CV or in a career profile, we have to mention things like, I'm very passionate about what I do. And this word passion keeps coming up in our language, day-to-day language. But in the dictionary of Bhagavad Gita, the word passion is not so much admired as much as we admire in our daily life. Passion means that I am going to do very hard work. This is what is desired in the outside world. And I have to get an output, which is a result. And this result has to be tangible result. So with my hard labor, whether I'm at work or I'm at hobby, I will get some output, a tangible result. And the way we talk about these things in our day-to-day life is that, okay, so tell us the action that you have done. Now, will you please tell us what is the result or the impact of the action was? And that's how you do your interview questions. And in those interviews, you try to find out that what was your situation and how did you tackle that situation and what was your action and what was the result that you achieved. So situation, task, action, and result. It's called STAR approach in the modern interview days, the STAR approach. So they interview with the STAR approach. They want to know your situation, the task you did, the action taken, and the result derived. Now, in mode of passion, which is being discussed here, in somewhere in the previous verses or in the future verses, Krishna is mentioning certain examples of mode of passion. And he picked up one particular example for mode of passion, and he gave the symptoms of mode of passion. You all have been hearing about modes for a long time, but still I'll repeat some of these. It's so important for us to continue to hear this. This mode of passion initially looks like very nectarian. It gives pleasure to the senses. It is very, very sweet. People, they are attracted to it. And once you achieve it, and when you are enjoying the fruits of this mode of passion, gradually it turns into what we call poison. It becomes bitter and becomes poison, which means it then brings a lot of misery. So the example is that if there's a boil in the hand or there's an itch in the hand, you keep itching, it feels very, very nice. But after some time, the itch grows and grows, and finally, you can't itch anymore because you are now bleeding. Similarly, this mode of passion, the example that Srila Prabhupada has particularly picked here was of the relationship between the man and woman. And this relationship on the bodily platform giving pleasure to the senses of each other is very, very lucrative, is very attractive. But when we go deeper and deeper, there's only so much that a man and woman relationship with the senses can be derived. After that, as gradually it grows, the relationship turns, or not the relationship, the pleasure, so-called pleasure, starts to turn into poison, because with the relationship comes a lot of responsibilities, understanding, and so forth and so on. So many duties of growing up children, working hard all life to build a house, and so many things are linked and connected to this relationship of man and woman. From scriptural vision, that's the very base or foundation of the shekels, or of the very reason of living entity being in the material platform. So there's a verse in chapter 3rd, 37th verse, which says, Kama esh, krodha esh, rajogun sabhavana, rajogun sambhava, rajogun samadbhava, mahashano mahapapama, vidyenam ihaverinam. So the verse is Kama esh, krodha esh, rajogun samadbhava, mahashano mahapapama, vidyenam ihaverinam. So when we know these modes of nature, they are resting in the material energy itself, which means that before the glance of Mahavishnu on the Mahatattva, there is always this energy, which is Krishna's own energy, which is material energy of Krishna, which is resting in the material nature. And when Lord glances on the material nature, mode of passion, mode of ignorance, and mode of goodness, they get activated. Once they get activated, that's when the material nature starts to intertwine with each other, and these modes, 3 modes becomes 9, 9 modes become 81, and so on and so forth, give results to some 8.4 million kind of modes giving rise to consciousness. This is how they're constructed. They're very much a part of the material nature. So there's no way Mammaya Dhurattaya, that living entity can ever win over these modes of nature. These modes of nature are very powerful, they're very strong, and they are what they are, and we experience them all the time, being unaware about them. This mode of passion actually is driving us nuts all the time, from morning till late, and we are being forced by the mode of passion to work very, very hard. So this kamesh, krodhesh, when the soul particularly comes in contact with mode of passion, which is rajogun here, rajogun, that what happens? It gives rise to something called as lust. Yeah, lust. Now, lust is nothing but a perverted reflection of love in the spiritual world. When we give pleasure to the senses of the Lord, Supreme Lord, and his associates, that is defined as love. Now, nothing in this material world is there which does not exist in Krishna and his spiritual abode. Similarly, lust is existing forever in Krishna's abode, but it is in the form of love. When the same love is reflected in the material world, it becomes lust. And this lust is getting produced by the contact of soul with the mode of passion, rajogun. Just like a yogurt is there, milk is converted into yogurt, Similarly, the love is converted into lust because of the senses wanting to enjoy something for me. Calm is defined like that. What is there for me in it? And that's how calm is defined. Now, this lust is the worst enemy. That's what Krishna is saying. And this lust exists in various forms. And we perhaps discussed in some of previous classes that this lust manifests itself as just like fire is covered by smoke. Dhumena, avriyate. Dhumena, smoke, and avriyate, covered. What is it covering? Fire, which is vahaniha. Dhumena vrite vahanira. So that is getting covered here. Now, if that is the case, that is one type of lust. The second type of lust is adarsha malena, which means mirror is covered by dust. That is second type of lust, degree of lust. And what is the third degree of lust, which is mentioned by Krishna? Garbha avrataha, ulbena garbha avrataha, which means in the womb, the child, embryo is covered. If we see the 3 degree of this lust, we can easily see that in purport, Srila Prabhupada explained that human being is covered by the lust to the degree like smoke is covering the fire. If you see some smoke somewhere, you perhaps know there is fire inside. And that is, Prabhupada has mentioned, is kind of beginning of the spiritual life. From there, there's a window that can open up and one can go and transcend the modes of nature with the help of devotional service. But the second layer, which is like the mirror, there's dust on the mirror, that is like birds and beasts. It's very difficult to get rid of this kind of lust. And one has to go through the cycle of evolution to come to the human life. And then when that degree of lust is reduced, then they can go to the transcend. Now the third, which is embryo in the womb, is a very, very difficult situation. We know that embryo can't do anything by itself and is hung upside down, completely dependent, and has no resolve but to somehow pass those 9 months within the womb. In that situation, it can't do anything. It's helpless, just like a person in the well is helpless. So the example of that lust is tree. Trees, they are helpless. They are as good as material matter, although they are living entity, but they behave as much as lust like matter. So they're so covered by the lust. And where all these lust is sitting, Krishna is saying this is the worst enemy, and they're sitting in the seat of mind, and that's where they're getting cultivated. So the lust, we can never ever satisfy the lust. That is the problem with lust. You want to do more of it, it will burn more. Just like you pour ghee in the fire, oil in the fire, similarly you will figure it out that as much as you pour, the fire will become more fierce and it will devour as much as ghee you want to pour. So the degree of lust works like that. The more desires you want to fulfill, the more, even more desires will come. And when you fulfill those desires, then more desires will come. It is a never-ending situation. It will never end. There is no end to it. It's not just about buying another car. It's just not about buying another flat or a bigger house or a bigger bungalow. It's not about having one business or the other business. No, it is not going to end. Wherever we live in this lifetime, those desires will chase us and reside in our heart and mind, and they will make sure that we become victimized by those desires, and we continue to perform our work to fulfill our material karma desires, material desires. And these desires, they are compared to like witches and ghosts. They are ruling our mind. They are ruling our intelligence. And therefore, Krishna is suggesting and recommending us, you get rid of this lust from your heart. How do you get rid of this lust from your heart? Now, one word is highlighted here. Again, Srila Prabhupada has mentioned, if you can see, in the material world, the center of all activity is sex. And thus, this material world is called Maithunya Agar, the shackles of sex life. In the ordinary prison house, criminals are kept within bars. Similarly, criminals who are disobedient to the law of the Lord are shackled by sex life. Advancement of material civilization on the basis of sense gratification means increasing the duration of the material existence of living entity. Now, it is so clear. Now, every desire that is existing in the material world is born from the desire of sex life. Believe it or not, that is what scriptures are telling us. Because we have that one desire of enjoying the senses, therefore, all other things are just paraphernalias around it. A bigger house, a great job, anything else that we desire is all connected to one thing, which is Maithunya Agar. Therefore, devotees of the Lord, they first of all give the very root away, which is Maithunya Agar, away. They do not want this Maithunya Agar. They don't want shackles of sex life. Therefore, when Srila Prabhupada came to the West and started giving Krishna consciousness, when devotees were getting ready, as they were becoming devotees, Srila Prabhupada just mentioned about 4 regulated principles, of which that we know is that we have to abide by the rule of no illicit sex. Sex for children, that we can grow in Krishna consciousness. Now, this is a very important point. Although I know it's 8:30, I'll just very quickly take through you all the story of Bhagavatam, where we know that Jarasandha attacked Mathura 17 times. And then on the 18th time when he attacked, Krishna ran. And at the same time, there was another king called as Kalyavan, who also came along, and they both attacked Krishna at one point in time, at the same time. So Krishna knew that this is very dangerous, and overnight he created what we know as Dwarika. And mystically, overnight, he transferred all his praja or citizens to Dwarika. And then he came back again barehanded. And when this Kalavan saw Krishna barehanded, he saw, okay, he also threw his weapons and he ran after Krishna. Krishna was nobody can cheat Krishna. So Krishna ran into a cave where there was a person called as Muchukunda who was residing in that cave, residing in the sense he was sleeping in that cave. So Krishna ran into that cave, and as he entered, Kalavan followed after him, and he thought that Krishna is lying here on the ground and he is acting as if he's sleeping. So Kalavan went ahead and kicked him. And Kalavan kicked him. The person who was sleeping, which was Muchukunda, he woke up. And as he woke up, his very glance burned Kalavan's body completely to ashes, because he was benedicted that whoever tried to wake you up without your will get burned by your glances. And this is how Krishna mystically worked, you know. So the story goes further, and we know that finally Kalavan was dead, and Muchukunda, Lord Krishna asked Muchukunda that, why don't you ask some boon? And Muchukunda said that, I do not want any boon, my lord. I just want to be at your lotus feet. At that point in time, he started to pray and started to glorify the Lord. And I'll see if I can, that verse, those verses are so beautiful and are in connection of what we're discussing right now. So let me just get that. Yeah, so if you read from text 47, this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, 51st chapter, text 47. This is, he's saying, Krishna, my dear Lord, I have wasted all this time becoming more and more intoxicated by my domain and opulence as an earthly king. I misidentify the mortal body as the self. What is this part? Which is Ahankar, being mentioned in Gita in the verse that we read today. Ahankar, misidentifying the mortal, which is material. It's a case, basically. It's a yantra runani maya. It's a material body created by the material energy, mortal body. But I understood as the self, became attached to children, wives, treasuries, land, and I suffered endless anxieties. With deep ignorance, I took myself to the body. And then he gave the analogies of a pot or a wall. It's a material object, just like pot. In the pot, the soul is residing. And he thought that I'm God among men. So, and I travel the earth surrounded by elephants and cavalries. So then he goes on defining his situation, that how he was so obsessed in sense enjoyments. He's saying, like a hungry snake licking its fangs before a mouse. Oh my Lord, you appear before such people as death, who do not worship you, and they are intensely greedy. Then he goes, having conquered the entire circle of directions and being thus free of conflict, a man sits on a splendid throne, receiving praise from leaders who were once his equals. But, and this is a very important part, but when he enters the woman's chambers, where sex pleasure is found, he is led about like a pet animal, O Lord. So the point being mentioned here, this is being identified. He's a great devotee of the Lord. This is being identified that how powerful he was. And he is just setting this conversation as an example for all of us. He's already seeing Krishna face to face. He's already a pure devotee. Sign being that when Krishna asks him, what do you want? He's not praying to like one prays to demigods and give me this and give me that. He's saying, oh my Lord, just give me shelter of your lotus feet. And that is purity of the heart. He has no other material desires. All the material desires are completely extinguished by devotional service. So what's coming in between? A living entity and the Lord, mode of passion. And what are the symptoms of mode of passion? Mathun, which is shekels of sex life, Mathun Agar. This Mathun Agar is actually, this is Methun Agar, shackles of sex life. It's created a prison house. And what do one do to get rid of this Methun Agar? One can get his senses involved or utilize them in the service of Krishna directly. And I'll quote this verse again. Mam abhya vicharena bhakti yogena sevaya sa gunana samtitaitana brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who is engaged in the pure devotional service will surpass the three modes of material nature without doubt and at once. So, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Nasochati na Kankshati. One who is Brahma Bhut, who is attained the Brahman, Nasochati na Kankshati. He does not hanker for what he should want, and he does not lament on the past or what he has lost. However, the person who is not Brahma Bhut, who is in mode of passion, is constantly hankering for something that he wants and constantly lamenting on the past of what all has happened and what all has he lost. So this is the summum bonum of this verse that we studied today, which was Yat tu kame pusanaka, Yat tu kame pusana karma, sahankarena va punaha kriyate bahulayasam tadrajasam udharatam. So if there is any comment or anything somebody wants to share, we can please have a very quick conversation. It's 8:37 now.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for a wonderful class. Prabhuji, I was just reflecting, and I think dovetailing our passion to Harinam in terms of chanting, as shown by Haridas Thakur and in the Shishtastakam verse, is the sort of developing higher taste and dovetailing our passion to Harinam and to the Lord is the best way of overcoming lust, as you were talking about. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mataji, for that comment. Hema Mataji, thank you. Absolutely correct. And this is what Srila Prabhupada has given as a fast track. It's a lift. You sit in the lift, you don't have to go to the staircases, and you will reach to Krishna. And as we know, there are many offenses to chanting of the holy names of the Lord. And we chant those 10 pointers in the morning, that these are the offenses to the holy name. Till we come to the offenseless chanting, we do what we call offensive chanting. Now, in offensive chanting stage, which is called clearing stage, we go through the process of anartha nivritti, which means the 6 enemies which are seated in a heart causing lust, which are lust, anger, greed, etc. We are gradually minimizing them or washing them away from our hearts and from our desires. Now, the chanting, although being the most powerful tool that we have in our kit to fight the enemy of lust, many people and many of us are unable to come to the stage of pure chanting. And since we are always attuned to work something or the other, we cannot sit actionless. We need to perform action. Chanting is one action. Hearing is another action. Eating prasadam is another action. Deity worship is another action. Listening to the scriptures, going to the temple, serving the devotees, serving the sages, all of those, these are the actions in devotional service. Since we are not at a platform where Srila Haridas Thakur is, who can chant constantly for almost all the hours of the day and who does not need anything else, he doesn't need to do any activity, he can perhaps be at that platform. But for all of us, even chanting our 16 rounds daily vows can be a challenge. And then what to talk about chanting in a high quality? And then what to talk about having completely offenseless chanting? So the crux of the matter is that how do we engage so when we do our chanting, how do we be present in chanting so we can honor the Lord? Second thing is, the rest of the time, what is it that we are doing? And how do we get rid of mode of passion, which is nothing but a desire to work for results, desire to work to enjoy the senses, desire to work to get name, fame, and bloating, false consciousness, the false ego, inflate that. So how do we get rid of this mentality, which can only be possible if we menially serve the spiritual master, the senior Vaishnavas, and if we continuously engage our senses in the service of the Lord and the Vaishnavas. Therefore, the Pancharatrika Vidhi of worshipping the deities of the Lord and the Vaishnavas go hands in hands with the sadhana bhakti of chanting the holy names of the Lord. And these two, Pancharatrika Bhakti and sadhana bhakti, they have to come together, and then we accept both of them together nicely, and gradually we can advance, and that way we can cross this transcendental, transcend the modes of material nature. So we have to be so careful about this mode of passion, because once we are in the grip of mode of passion, it's like a rat in the mouth of a snake. Whatever he does, or a frog in the mouth of a snake, first he thinks that he can still escape, so he runs on his 3 legs. And the second leg goes into the mouth of a snake. Then he's still trying and running, and the snake is running at the same pace, and the frog is running in front of like that with 2 legs. And then another leg goes into mouth of a snake, and with 1 leg, frog is running. He's still thinking that I can escape death. He's still thinking that I can survive. And if that frog gets a fly in the mouth, he'll throw his tongue out and eat that fly at that moment in time when his last breath is going on. And that is the nature of material desires. This mode of material passion, it will destroy our consciousness. Therefore, we should be staying in mode of goodness, and that we have to do devotional service. And of course, the chanting as well as sadhana bhakti has to come hand in hand together, and we can escape these modes. This is 42 past 8.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Sure.
Hare
Yes,
Krishna. Have you got time?
I am okay.
Okay. I like that example of the frog and the snake. So if the frog gives in, that is like surrendering, and that is his best option, yes?
In that analogy, perhaps I can bring it to now human beings. Human beings have a solution that instead of falling prey to the snake, which will happen at the time of death, we don't go running after saving our lives in search of the sense enjoyment, the fulfilling material desires. Rather, we turn ourselves to the service of the Supreme Lord and the Vaishnavas, so that the fire within our hearts, the fire of lust, gets settled. Otherwise, this fire will devour everything that we possess, and it will continue to make us mad, chase our desires lifetime after lifetime. Therefore, as a grahastha, it's very important for us, what are we exposing our children to, so that the seeds of material desire does not go in their heart, at least this lifetime, and only the seed of devotional service go in their heart. And same is true for us.
And can you please expand a little on text 17 about one who is not motivated by false ego and is not entangled in the material intelligence or whatever? I wondered if he kills, he does not kill. I'm just wondering, why would he want to kill? Isn't there a desire there?
Okay. One who is not motivated by false ego, whose intelligence is not entangled, though he kills men in this world, does not kill, nor is he bound by his actions. So you see, this is it is coming from the same verse, Kameshu Krodesh Rajogun Samad Bhava Mahachano Mahapapma Vidyanam Verenam, where Krishna is saying, once you get in touch with mode of passion, if that lust comes and lust does not get fulfilled, wrath comes, wrath becomes anger. Now, if this anger is being exercised to fulfill our own desires, then that killing is bad, and that anger is bad because it will lead to illusion. Whereas the same wrath, like Hanumanji used it in the service of Lord Ram by burning Ravana's entire Lanka, that wrath becomes devotional service. And same applies here in case of Lord Arjuna. The Lord is saying, kill them because I've already killed them. They are already devoured by me. You have just seen in my mouth, they were all dying by the influence of time. They are all adharmis. You are Kshatriya. My incarnation on this planet has happened only to destroy this, and you are the sadhan. You are the one who is going to do it. So you better do it. Otherwise, you will be performing adharma, because you're not doing dharma of killing these people. And therefore, that is a devotional service, because it is happening by direction of Krishna. Whatever Krishna says, that is dharma. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagvat pranito. Whatever Bhagwan has said, pranit. Bhagwan tu sakshat bhagvat pranito. That becomes dharma. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagvat pranito. So when Krishna is saying you kill, that is dharma. And that is the point Krishna is making on this particular verse. So if you read purport, it's mentioned about the wrath of Hanuman. In the real world, how would you recognize that Krishna is telling you to kill? Is that in war or something like that? So in the Kali Yuga, Krishna is not saying to kill. In Kali Yuga, Krishna is saying to kill the mentality, demoniac mentality. You kill that. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was about to kill Jagai and Magai, we know the incidents that how Nityanand Prabhu reminded him, oh my Lord, please don't kill them. Because in this incarnation, you have come as a devotee of the Lord in the mood of Radharani to show compassion to the living entities. And therefore, I urge you, because this Jagai has helped, or Madhai has helped saving my life by stopping Jagai to throw another stone upon me. They have done some devotional service. They have saved me. Agyat Sukriti has happened. Now, please bestow your compassion upon them. And immediately, Lord Chaitanya gave away his chakra. He was about to release the Sudarshan chakra. He gave away, retracted it, and instead he hugged them both. And when he hugged them both, he turned into pitch black. His body, which is golden, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, which is gold, molten gold, pink color, turned pitch black for quite some time. And then we see how these two, Jagai and Magai, became one of the best devotees in Lord Chaitanya's entourage. That is what is required to be done in Kali Yuga, not to go and do jihad, do religious wars. That's not recommended anywhere in the Shastra. So why should we do it? And that's the point. Thank you, Prabhuji. Very well explained. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Satyanarayana here. I got a question, if you got the time.
Yes, please.
Yes, you know, when Krishna was attacked by Jarasandha and Kalyavan, and Krishna hid himself in the cave. So where that cave, location of the cave? Is it still in Mathura or?
Good question. It should be somewhere there. I am sorry, Prabhu. I don't know the physical
that's all
location.
right. I thought if you know, yeah.
I can research on it and find out. But the explanation is that it was in the same location. It wasn't near Dwarika because Krishna came back to the same location where Kalyavan was. So we can find out. I have no idea of that location.
Okay. So what about Krishna ends up going to Dakor? So
yeah.
Can you explain what happened there?
Prabhu, I didn't get the context.
How he ends up going to Dakor?
Oh, I see. Prabhu, I'll have to look for it and then I'll explain.
Because Mathura, Dakor, and Dwarka, you know what I mean?
Right. I know.
A lot of difference in between.
I was reading Srimad Bhagavatam mentioned that he goes to Dwarika, and I'll have to see the in between he went to Dakor and how he went. I'll have to see and come back to you. Next class, I'll read about it.
No problem. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
Okay, I think dear devotees, it is already 8:50, and I'm very thankful to all of you to be patiently listening to what I had to share with you all. And I look forward to see you very soon Thank you very much. And we can all log off now. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you
Prabhuji.
very much.
Thank you.
Krishna Prabhu. Thank you.
Krishna,
Wonderful class.
everybody.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.